Okay, so this is our end of month meetup. Everybody's here. Who's the first time in here? Glad to have y'all. If you have any questions about DevOps or any of our meetups, reach out to any of the organizers. There's not really anything new going on. I am going to try to. Some people asked for it. There was some information we sent about a lot of stuff going on in the DevOps world this year at the kickoff we had, which turned out pretty good. We had about 65 or so people there in the first of the month, and so that was a good turnout. I did a lot of good feedback on the speaker presentations, and the live streams are on devopslive.org. You can go there and see that if you missed it. I highly encourage it. Paul Reed did a really good job talking about DevOps and had a lot of good feedback on that. Tonight we have our honorary chef person here, Sean, and is going to talk about compliance and stuff.
Great.
There we go.
All right. Thank you. It's great to be here. Which camera should I face? I feel like I need to go back and forth. Okay. I'll turn a little bit here. Do we have any remote viewers? Yeah, okay. So hi folks out there in Google land, Google Hangout land. If you have trouble hearing, please let us know. You can post in the chat if there's any trouble with audio or screen sharing. So I'm going to go full screen here for the folks in the room. And if you have any trouble remote, just go ahead and post in the chat room. All right. How many folks here are Chef users? Show of hands. Okay, cool. Who's used Puppet or other automation tools? All right, pretty good mix. Excellent. So just a quick introduction to Chef. Chef is a company based in Seattle. Chef is also an automation framework. So we have what's called a domain-specific language, or a DSL, that you can use to describe your infrastructure and build servers very quickly and repeatably. Now, recently, we've also developed a tool called Chef Compliance, and that's directed at not your infrastructure as code, but compliance and audit specifically, and how to define those policies as code. So I'm going to do a brief slideshow presentation, and then we'll go into a live demo and leave some time at the end for questions. So who's ever had to do sit through an audit? For example, Sarbanes-Oxley or PCI audits? Anyone? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think a trip to the dentist is more fun than the PCI audit. So what does that look like? Typically, it looks something like this. Your auditor comes into the room with a big PDF file or maybe a Word document, and inside that document are the results of a scan that somebody ran on your machines. And there are a whole bunch of things that are flagged that you have to either say, A, this is irrelevant and doesn't even apply to us. B, it's okay, we need to get an exception for it. Or C, fine, I'll go fix it. And then you write a script to go fix that thing. So the problem with this is that the different groups that have to work on this audit are all speaking different languages. So your auditor speaks PDF and Excel and Word. Your security, yeah.
You switch over to in your Hangout, you're sharing one application.
Oh, okay. I'll just share whole desktop instead. That's probably better. Come on, Hangouts. Very good. Okay, so we'll just do entire screen. That should be better. Okay, cool. Yeah, so the problem is we're all speaking different languages here. The auditors have their Word docs and PDF files. The security team, maybe they hand you a pile of shell scripts. That sounds like a familiar scenario. Or some security tools. And then the ops people are using Chef because they're awesome. But none of these things really talk to one another in a coherent way, right? So you still have to do the manual steps and then go and remediate, either by hand or in an automated fashion, like a Chef recipe. So we built a workflow that builds compliance into a very early stage of the software development lifecycle. So instead of it being a reactive thing where maybe once a quarter or once every 6 months, the auditor comes and says, all right, it's audit time, let's go and scan your machines. And then you jump through the hoops and then get approved and they come back next year. And again, you repeat the process. Instead of being that reactive process, we get more proactive about security and audit and bake our audit controls all the way back into the early stages of dev and testing. So that at every stage of the pipeline, not only is the application code being tested, as it is today, but our infrastructure code and our security standards are all kind of rolled into our entire process. So that way you don't go, say you have a 30-day sprint. What does that look like? Normally 28 days of development, and like 2 for QA and testing right at the very end, this frantic thing. And everybody knows they're not going to finish. It's a very common pattern, right? So if we can get more proactive about doing security as a habit, have it just be built into our whole process, then it just becomes a thing that you do. James has a button he can push that spits out basically a PCI report, fully complete, before the auditor shows up. So you can get very proactive about these things. It's meant to be built into the way you work and not kind of an inconvenience that rears its ugly head every several months. So it's challenging to stay ahead of this thing. One of the #1 security problems nowadays, do you know what it is? What I'm going for here? It's really simple. Yeah. Credentials, yes, but I'm thinking more like unpatched OS, right? It's such a simple thing on the face of it. Like, you think about it, like just upgrade your machine, but you just can't do that, right? And you can't always do that on a certain schedule, and so organizations, big and small, fight with this. It's an enormous challenge just to keep your OS from drifting and getting out of date. So we want to build this into our process so that it's not extra work for the sysadmins who are already very busy. So this is what the workflow might look like. We start with compliance. We have a set of rules that say you may do X on servers and you may not do Y on servers. These are all written as really simple statements, either in server spec, or you can use the new inspec that we just released. Inspec is a lot like server spec. Has anyone not heard of server spec? Just a quick show of hands. Okay. Just to summarize, server spec is a server testing language. It's built on top of Ruby. So if you've ever played with Ruby, Ruby is the framework that kind of supports that. And this language is very specifically designed to test machines for conditions. Does this user exist? Is a port open? Is this application running on it? Okay. So what we did was we took server spec and took a look at it, figured out the parts we liked the most, and added some features that we thought might be helpful. There's metadata, so you can tag things with a severity level. You can have descriptions and organize them the way an auditor might like to see them, right? And that way you're speaking the same language that the auditor speaks. Any questions so far? Actually, why don't we save questions till the end? Yeah, it's better. Let's jump into the demo. So I'm going to demo for you the workflow that we just looked at on that last slide. My screen will ever come up. Here it comes. Yay. This is a Chef workstation in the cloud. So I spun this up for the demo. It's basically a pre-configured Chef environment that has got, a Chef server, a delivery server, all baked in. So let's go ahead and open those. While we get set up here, what are your favorite text editors? What are people using these days? Visual Studio Code's pretty solid offering. I'm going to show you some cool features in that during the demo. That's actually what we started using for the demo, just because of the Git integration. It's so pretty. Atom, I really like Atom too. The Chef plugins from Atom are quite solid. I use it in training now, so when new. Do they? So there, yeah. The last time I checked, there wasn't parity, but that very well could have been a while ago. If I could get those plugins, yeah, I'd just hang out in here. So here it is, Visual Studio Code. Microsoft is sort of throwing their hat in the ring there.
Well, it's actually, I think in the documentation said it was a fork of Atom.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I find it amusing that it's got better Git support than Atom itself does, given that it came from GitHub. The folks behind GitHub, right? All right. So we're just about loaded up here. We're going to start our tour in production, because that's where everything matters. This is our production, demo server. It's kind of, maybe kind of hard to read from the back, but we've got some hipster Ipsum mixed with market speak on the page here. So imagine this is our production site, and we want to run a scan against that machine to make sure it's compliant. So I'm going to go in here into the Chef compliance dashboard and click on CAD Simple Web, and that's the machine. We're going to go ahead and run scan. And I want to do a web server check. I'm not going to do the whole OS scan because that takes a little while. This is a bit quicker. So you get this compliance report back that will tell you what's wrong. You can kind of, zoom in and look at your issues based on criticality. So I've got one critical issue, and that's listed down here. Let me make my text size a bit bigger so it's easier to read. And we're failing this test that says Apache should not allow directories to be indexed. So in plain English, that means people can get stuff from our web server. It means they can kind of browse around in directories and whatnot. And that's kind of not really a good thing. We don't want people, poking around on our web servers. So our next step is to do a little detective work and figure out, is this just some rogue machine? Did it get a bad config somehow? Maybe somebody hand edited the file. Or is the problem there in the code that built the machine? Because we use Chef, we've defined our infrastructure as code. And we can go right back and look at the code or the DNA of the box and see the, the Chef code that built the box. So let's do that next. We're going to come in here. This is your standard Chef cookbook. And in the default recipe, we've got a template resource here. And this is the Apache config. So that's defined in this template file. And aha, there it is, sure enough. So this seems to be the problem. This indexes, and the fix, the theory is that by taking that out, we should be able to fix the issue. So we're big on testing. We can easily spin up a VM and test this machine. So I'm going to use Chef Test Kitchen. Test Kitchen is an integral part of our workflow. So it allows us to really quickly provision a VM either on our local laptop or as an EC2 instance, VMware. Wherever you have compute resources, basically, you can spin up a VM. You can even use it with Docker, which is pretty cool. It's super fast. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. So what's happening now is we're requesting a VM from Amazon, from EC2, and then it's going to go ahead and spin that VM up, and then we're going to be able to test our changes. So while that's running, we can go ahead and start making our changes in here. And because we have versioned everything, what we want to do is test our changes locally, create a new cookbook version, and then cut a new release of the cookbook. So that way, when we're ready to go to prod, we can just say to our Chef server, all right, these machines get the new version of the code. So what we're going to do is create a branch. And you'll notice over here in the text editor that Visual Studio Code is actually Git aware. It's noted down here that I'm inside a branch. I can safely edit this code without mucking up the master branch. So that's a good thing. We're fans of branch-driven development. It's a good way to introduce changes quickly and safely, into your environments. So the idea is you branch out, make your feature, test it. Once it's working, you're going to put it right back into the master branch. I'll show that in a moment. So let's start with indexes. All right, so we fixed that. And see the little Git icon? It knows there's a change that has not, been recorded or not been checked in yet. My next stop is metadata. I'm going to do this manually. You can also automate bumping of your versions. Pretty easy to do. And then finally, we want to see our change move through the pipeline. So let's add a little bit of text to the home page. DevOps Live is a new name. I like it. All right, cool. So we've got 3 changes queued up. I can actually view them right here in the text editor too. This is kind of cool. You get a little, yeah.
Is that an embedded version of code, or is that like a plugin?
No, I think it just ships with it this way. Yeah, yeah, it just comes right out of the box, which is kind of nice. So let's go back and check our kitchen run. All right, there it goes. Just took a little bit to stand up that machine. All right, so in the interest of time, I'm going to just give away the spoiler here. The test is going to fail because the code is indeed broken, as you saw. And then so what we're going to do is put this fix in, run it a second time, and then it's going to pass. So let's go ahead and commit our change. Fixed, open indexes.
This is going to fail because the audit compliance is failed?
Yes, exactly. So the machine is functional, right? In this case, its production is stable, but it's got an issue. So we need to fix it, but we want to do it in a way that's not going to break prod, right? So by failure, I mean, it's not that the machine will fail to build or that Apache won't start. I mean that it's failing its compliance check. Yeah. All right, so we fixed open indexes, updated our company name. Let's go ahead and commit our changes. So then if I go back here, you can see Git status. Everything's clean, all right? So at this point, you do some more local testing, maybe make sure that everything is working correctly before you commit the code, right? And then you can go ahead and push this into delivery. So I'm going to do a delivery review. And now we've entered this continuous delivery pipeline where further tests will be run in individual pipelines. So the OS can get tested with the app, with the middleware, all in a merged config. These stages are fixed, but what you run inside of each stage is up to you. So you can even run, if you had a Java app, for example, you could run JUnit, or Selenium tests, or whatever's appropriate for your framework. So what's happening now is worker nodes are running the really quick, oh my, look at that. Yeah, see, live demo. The delivery server is not behaving. Okay, yeah, it happens sometimes. That's awesome. Let's talk about compliance some more. Yeah. Jenkins? So couple ways you could do that. You could either just go all in and just use delivery to replace Jenkins. Okay, like if you have a homegrown pipeline that you built with Jenkins, if it's close enough that it matches your needs, you could use Chef Delivery to replace it. Otherwise, you can also have delivery call Jenkins jobs if you wanted to externalize, and have Jenkins builds as part of the delivery process. Yeah, you can. Yeah. Okay. So just see if there's a quick fix for this. Oh, interesting.
In the process, like if we have to you could do a posting.
So, GitHub's down. Well, I guess we have a dependency we need to work on. Us and half the rest of the world. Sorry, world. The internet's broke. Let's just have some drinks. And we'll be down at the pub. All right. Oh yeah, we really are. Yeah. Let me just wrap up and describe to you what would have happened, if we finished going through the pipeline. Then I've got some other content that we can actually do. All right. So back to the dashboard. When GitHub is not broken, apparently, and you don't code dependencies to GitHub, the code will continue to move through these stages. So in verify, a human hits, okay, I looked at your code. Let's let it go into the build stage. Then when you hit the build stage, you go a little deeper. You run tests that take longer. Maybe you might, run some integration or smoke tests. And then finally you get up to acceptance, and that's where you would have, like a sample app stood up. This is where, a QA tester or somebody could log on, poke around, make sure everything's okay. At that point, you can make a decision whether to hit the deliver button or not. Okay. When we say deliver, then you go into these unified pipelines here where your Chef cookbook or your app gets tested with the OS, with the infrastructure and different combinations of things that you need to test. Anywhere there's a dependency, if you declare it, Chef Delivery will rerun the pipeline of the dependency just to make sure that, hey, maybe something that we did broke that other thing, or maybe the thing they did broke our thing. We want to catch as many of those as possible so you never have to hear those words, it worked on my machine, right? Nobody wants to hear that, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to fix it. So union, testing things together in a unified place. Rehearsal is what it sounds like, a final dress rehearsal. We make sure the whole stack can stand up start to finish with a fresh build. And then delivered can mean what you want it to mean. It can mean deploy the code all the way to prod, or it can mean deliver, a package to a file repository or something similar. So the idea here is you introduce change such as bug fixes, compliance fixes, and whatnot into a pipeline, and that way you have, you can start to move fast, but in a safe way. So any questions on delivery? All right, I've got some more compliance content that we can go through. Who's got a laptop? All right, I've got a few workstations. If anyone wants to follow along, I can give you one. Otherwise, I'll just kind of walk through it from up here. And I don't think this next part requires GitHub, which is good. All right, so you're going to
Chef compliance, one foot thing that's coming up in 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah, we've got a few in the marketplace now. So you can get a compliance server, Chef server. We don't have that for delivery yet. But if you're interested in taking delivery for a spin, let me know. I can help make that happen. Email. So email's good. I should be on the meetup page, but I'll write my email down too. Chef.io or Chefio. I always say it EO because it's hard to avoid. Indian Ocean apparently is what the IO is for.
Read that backwards, so it shows up correctly in the video.
Oh, is it reversed?
Is that announced?
Sorry, remote folks, you'll just have to like work it out. Okay. So this is content for a workshop that we're doing tomorrow, but it does highlight some of the cool things about chef compliance and InSpec in particular. So we'll talk a little bit more about chef compliance and how you might use it where it's appropriate. So everyone is going to run into some kind of regulatory compliance, or even if it's just internal, like the security folks are going to want to enforce certain rules. How do we automate that? So a little less than a year ago, we were thinking about this problem. We built Chef Audit. You can run Chef in an audit mode. But then we encountered this company out of Germany called VolcanoSec, and they had this really amazing product that lined up with basically exactly what we were trying to do. So we bought them, and now they've been sort of merged into our Borg, and it's called Chef Compliance. One thing that's nice about it is you can run it without any agent or any other chef software on the machine. It leaves nothing behind. It basically runs a read-only scan of your box to tell whether it's in compliance or not with your rules. You can run it from the agent as well. If you have machines where SSH is not allowed, you could have Chef Client, for example, trigger a Chef Compliance run. All right. So there are some pre-built profiles. We have a basic Linux, basic Windows, the CIS benchmark. That was the base you guys used, right, as your starting point? Okay. Some of the rules in there, I don't know, may not apply, or just may seem silly or quaint. So you'd have to work with your security folks to determine what was actually appropriate for your environments. But we've got a pretty good start, and that CIS benchmark cookbook is online. You can download that for free. So enter InSpec. InSpec is the compliance language that we wrote that builds upon the success of server spec. And so here's an example of the InSpec DSL. It's really simple. Like if you've ever written any chef or simple Ruby script, it's pretty easy to make sense of these things. And it's almost English-like. So here we're saying port 80 should not be listening. Port 443 should be listening, and it has to be TCP. So we have profiles, and I'll show you some of those in the GUI in a moment. You can also create your own. If you guys would like a copy of this deck, I'll be happy to share it with you as a PDF. If you want to try to go through the workshop on your own. This is pretty new content for us, so we're looking for feedback. If you want to kick the tires, I'll export this and post a download link for you. So here's the compliance web UI, and you can execute scans just like I did in the the delivery demo just a little while ago. I have a lab environment, so if after we wrap up here anyone wants to kind of play with these VMs, I'll stick around for a bit. Let's just go ahead and walk through one. I'm going to log on to a box. Where is it? Oops. Sorry about that. All right, wrong window. There we go. Okay. So Nathan Harvey likes to assign workstations with a pack of cards. It's kind of cool. Yeah, that'll be at that Cap 1 workshop, but definitely want to make it available if if you're not going to that, you'd like to check this out. I'll give you the content. Oh, okay. Lost it somehow. Okay. Screen share. You working? Okay, sweet. I'll try to make this a bit bigger too. Groovy. SSH out of this machine. I'll use this one. There we go. Okay. All right, and then we'll go ahead and hit the web UI. I think I have open already. Okay, sure enough, there it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a new node. So this is how you might add new machines. You can do them one at a time, or you can do them in bulk. There's also an API. So if you're a Chef user, in a few lines of code, you could whip up a knife search, for example, that would just kind of whip through all your machines and add them into compliance. We're just going to do this one machine for now, though. Just do it in my environment. You can use keys. Recommend that instead of the password, but it does support a password if you need it. Okay, so I've just added a new machine, and now I can go ahead and scan it. So let's go ahead and do the whole OS patch level, and we'll do base SSH as well. Nice, unreachable target. Okay. How do we scan this other one? Yeah, that one was reachable. So while that runs, I think we can just go into reports. I don't have any reports yet. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, it finished. Not too bad. All right, so you can kind of mouse around here if you want to drill in and say, oh, I just want to look at the critical ones. All right, let's go take a look at those. And those are highlighted in red here. Disabling empty passwords, permitting root-based login. There's a lot of no-nos on here. Like I'd agree with some of these criticals. You really don't want people bopping around your network as root if possible. So then what you could do is write a remediation recipe for this, and then run that on your nodes. And that will go ahead and fix the problem, not only now but in the future as well. That's one of the great things about working with an automation framework like Chef. You don't fix stuff over and over again. You fix it once, check it into your source code repo, and then any machine that's out there will get that fix, and any new machine that gets built will be built correctly. So let's go back to the slide deck, and we can take a little look at InSpec. All right, so if you wanted to walk through the exercise, you can log on here. We ran a scan. These here. Here we go. All right, so here is some inspec profile code. You'll probably get a closer view in the browser. Here we go. So that's it. What's that? Oh, did I? So when I switch like windows, it seems to kill it. I'll just stay with the slide deck. So it's probably safer. Hi, come on in. Yeah, it doesn't seem to like the context switching or popping out of full screen. PowerPoint. Whee. Okay. So we have controls. That's, you know, kind of audit speak for these things. And each control has some different features. So there's metadata like the impact. This looks like, you know, of low impact. Or is it? No, it's not. It's, so one maybe is, yeah. It's a scale of 0 to 1. So 1 would win you a 10, you know, critical if it tripped this one. Etsy SSH should be a directory. Yeah, if that were a file, that could be a problem. I could see that. Yeah, or if it was a symlink, that might not be so good. So some of these are built in, like file, for example, or there's a good one for SSH in here. Let's look at basic SSH. Set protocol version to 2. So this is the one we fixed during the training workshop. SSH version 1 should have gone away like, what, 12 years ago, right? Or longer, maybe 15 years ago. Yeah. Wow, I'm dating myself. Have you seen The Matrix Reloaded? So there's this great scene where Trinity hacks the Matrix using SSH v1. This is one of the rare like movie scenes that actually is, you know, somewhat realistic.
Still no sign. I don't know what they're doing, but they only got 2 minutes left.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, SSH v1, it's a bad thing. Hopefully you're not running it, but if you had this, you know, you could detect that and then go and develop a plan to remediate it. So let's take a look at the, am I still sharing? I switched back to PowerPoint, okay. So to break it down a bit, you have your impact, that's critical. You've got a title to kind of, you know, make a human-friendly label for it when you're reading it later. And then in here, you go in and change the default setting and say, you know what, this is 2016. We're no longer going to support SSH v1. Sorry, like get a new client. Oh, you're looking at the notes. Okay, you're looking at my laptop. How about now? Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll just go with the largest window and share desktop. Someone needs to solve this problem. Remote simultaneous. But switching apps is what seems to just totally throw it off. Okay. Better? Okay. Yeah, so wake up Neo. Make it bigger. Like that guy. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. All right, so here is an example of the recipe you might write to fix that. You could chef generate a cookbook. edit your template. This is kind of a cool feature that I just learned about. If you're trying to whip up a quick chef template, you can feed it -s. I didn't know this until recently. And then it will use that as the starting point for your template. Yeah, just saves you a step of having to copy it into place, you know, if you're in a spot where you can get at the file. So then we test the recipe and then remediate. And then at the end of this material, there's a bit on writing your own profiles. So you may not, you know, find everything you need inside the canned, you know, profiles that come out of the box. You might need to write your own. So in this section here, we take a use case. We basically build a really bare bones compliance profile. And then what we do, let's see if I can show you the code for it. Yeah, there it is. Pretty small text, but it's the same language that you saw before. Once you've learned it, you can copy and paste and kind of zoom in a bit. Yeah, there we go. So same DSL, it's real simple. You've got impact title, description, and then a describe section. You know, that typically will check characteristics of something or look for text within a file, see if a service is running or a port is open. And then these can become part of your chef, you know, compliance profiles. All you do is basically zip that thing up and upload it to your compliance server, and then you've got that, you know, added to your body of tests, and you never have to add it again because every single time you run it, it'll be there for you. So that is a quick overview of chef compliance and inspec. Any questions?
So the UI, is it one separated leadership?
It's separate for now. I think there's some work underway to kind of, you know, have one UI to rule them all. But because, you know, we only just acquired this company, it's going to take a little time to like fully bake it in. The good news is it runs nicely standalone. Like you can just stand one of these up and play with it even without Chef Server. So if you've got an Amazon account, feel free to take it for a spin. We love to get feedback and, you know, see what you think of it.
What are some ways you've seen work with by company security team or audit team to form this and to get them involved in that?
It can be challenging because oftentimes those other teams are very used to tools that they already have. They may have processes in place. The security might be outsourced either to another, you know, another group in the company or even another entity altogether. I think the visibility, you know, having this visibility, most of the security folks I've talked to have been you know, encouraged by it. I think that we need more profiles, you know, because not everybody's going to write their own from scratch. And so there, you know, there are some community ones. We will be releasing packets of, you know, benchmarks and whatnot each quarter, depending on, you know, on our capacity and like what's most in demand.
Yeah, so that's something like these are the top 10.
Yeah, PCI is pretty close to the top of the list. I know that one is definitely up there.
So for PCI companies, what is that? You just run it on the boxes and it tells them?
Well, here's the problem. Like a good chunk of that stuff is fairly easy to describe in a language, right? You can say, well, SSH shouldn't be listening on, you know, a certain port, or it shouldn't be using protocol 1. That's a very clear thing that you can describe. What if the rule is no one shall have access beyond that which is required to do their job duties? You know what I mean? Like that you can't really automate that. That's a very hard thing to describe in a programming language. So we will automate what we can and you know, encourage people to develop their own policies and procedures for things that can't be automated. Oh yeah, there's a whole stack of them. Yeah. Yep. all sorts of stuff about how data can be stored, where it needs to be encrypted, what types of, firewalls and stuff you have in place. It's,
Along with it, you refer to NIST as well.
yeah.
Along with,
Yeah, NIST is a pretty well-known standard too.
I would still say that I'm comparing this with whatever was done.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So are you saying that you could check the company wide? You need to put together a testing, right? You need to put together
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's so many things wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And if you will read it,
They do. Yeah.
So many of them.
Yeah.
So there's a company called Aldrax. They are fantastic. They come up with a team that we deploy the product. They actually work with AWS API.
Yeah.
And they can give you a nice report.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
So there's someone, Amazon is promoting that as a partner tool. When you deploy your solution, you can also give you compliance with it. I'm trying to see how if I don't want to use this.
So it's a big difference that this is integrated with Chef so that your remediation becomes programmatic.
Eventually, yeah. Especially this is powerful for existing Chef users who are comfortable with the DSL because you just plug it right into your workflow, right?
Then your insurance compliance with everything.
Exactly.
And whatever we do back in that.
Yeah, so if you're a test kitchen user, for example, I'm accustomed to spinning VMs up locally and building things on my laptop. I can run all my compliance checks right there within Test Kitchen. So some integration, that might be one reason to use Chef. But if you find another compliance tool that you like and it's working for you, like go for it. Yeah, that's the kicker, right? Yeah, and we honestly we really don't have that many yet. Like, yeah, yep, yeah, that's a huge.
So I think Chef can go there.
Yeah, and we're headed that way. Yeah, so we're just right now taking feedback. What do you want to see first? I can send that back to the product folks and say, yeah, look, this is what people want the most. There is one standard that I got a lot of requests for. I can't remember the acronym right now. I'll have to look it up. But it's kind of a standard programming format for these types of rules. No, well, yeah, we can do JSON today. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of course, the security folks, have their own way, right? Like they've got this. I'll look it up, when we break.
I would recommend anyone go with this standard. If you can't do that.
No, where you missing standards, you just create a profile. And that profile then work with the team on a different code.
Yeah. And so in other words, you're treating your compliance tests also as code. And that's an important, factor because they're going to mutate and change over time. So, you control this basically because it's open source. You can add new rules, take them out, adjust on the fly. Let's say the auditor said, oh, well, we forgot one test. All right, well, let me just whip that up, and then you just add it into the source code repo and you're continually. There are some actually. Let me see if there's, yeah.
But you mean like you store them in GitHub, like people do QuickBooks, or you mean there's some out there that you can download?
Yeah, I think that's what he was getting at, right?
He's looking for a profile that example.
There could be to your own particular compliance.
So, like keyword list, and you always
switching to QuickBooks. So,
Of course, GitHub is still down.
But I bet it's there.
Yeah.
You mentioned the PCR. Where's that?
We don't have it yet.
Yeah, that's right.
We have CIS. We don't have PCI yet, though.
So where's
Yeah.
that? Where do you look at that?
That you could go. Well, one of two things. You could spin up a pre-configured compliance server, and it will just have those profiles like baked into it already. Or you could go to GitHub, which would look awesome if it were up, and I could show it to you. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, there's a copy of it here. Audit CIS. All right. So Audit CIS, it doesn't use InSpec because it was written before InSpec existed, but it's a good example of yeah. Tough crowd.
So you just take this and put it in one list, and it'll.
Basically, yeah. If you have Chef 12 or later, you can kick in what's called audit mode, and the audit mode will run and tell you all of the things that it finds wrong with the box.
It'll send back to the compliance database, the compliance database.
That's not integrated yet. No, you can't just feed the CIS cookbook into compliance yet. Yeah.
So that's gonna either deploy if it's wrong, or is it gonna?
No, it won't fail. It used to, but they fixed that. So like you can have a scenario with a working server that's not compliant. Yeah.
So this cookbook, well, actually, if you see is if you go to this new source.
Oh, okay.
You can copy like all the pieces out of the cookbook are going to be the exact same code that you were showing in the compliance server. You can literally rip out a lot of it and say, hey,
Yeah.
you can't use it to look at convert compliance servers. Well, does that use source like one? No.
It goes straight to GitHub, so you get a nice pink unicorn. Yeah. Yeah. Let's try that. I can actually just download this and extract it. So.
So as a consumer of compliance, what sort of format's gonna get the
Yeah, they want to consume that report in a format that's friendly to them. So
put it in their report format?
yep. Let's take a look.
That's wonderful for
Yeah, for the web UI. Yeah. Right now, really, it's pretty simple. It's basically just JSON. So if you could massage it into CSV or an Excel file, built-in support is on the roadmap so that you can just click and say, yeah, I want a PDF of that. Spit that out for me, And then you can hand that PDF over, and it's immutable, right? It's not, unless you have Adobe Acrobat, you're going to tinker with it. But, it's that artifact that you hand back to the auditor and say, here, Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are you able to compliance criteria?
Yeah. So those are the baseline, security tests. It's a small handful of tests, basically, for Windows right here. There's 29 of them. So. Oh yeah, you can separate them by OS. Absolutely. Yeah. Or whatever else you want. Right. So the CIS ones are actually in here already. So if you want to save yourself the trouble of like importing them, they're already baked in. You could just spin up this image and just, sort of kick the tires on it.
You could actually go through categories, like 2.PCI comes in the section 3.1.5 is non-compliant. This actually gives you can go in here and say, look, here's 3.1.5 or 5.1.2, and then you can show them in their terminology, right? So this is the the control that you actually look at appears to be the result of that control on that filter.
Yeah.
And you can manually
What is the next step? This says that it showed up as non-compliant, and you go remediate it, and now it's compliant.
Correct. Yeah. Now we don't have automated remediation yet, but you know, you could, if you know how to do Chef, you could easily write recipes to remediate, you know, things like shell shock or what was the other one? Heartbleed.
It would be nice to have like recipes in supermarkets. Some of those basic ones that are
Yeah.
common.
That's my number one request from the field is where are the, you know, the examples and the, so I'm going to pass your feedback back to product. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here's a good one.
It is a cookbook that resolves shelf shock.
Yeah. So it also has an audit recipe. So this is a nice example. I think Julian wrote this. Julian Dunn might have written this. So you can run the default. That's audit and remediate, you know, CVE 2014, blah. You can run it in audit only mode and say, I just want to know about it, but not fix the problem. Or you can run remediate by itself. Yeah. I think what's powerful about this in particular is that it gives a common language to you and the auditor. You know, like James was pointing out, they'll say, you know, 5.1.2 failed. Well, now I know what that means. And I can go back and say, well, oh yeah, okay. Or, oh no, it didn't fail. Like, look, here's the code, I ran it. And it can reduce some of that ping-ponging back and forth that you have to do with the auditor. You know, it's not fun because they pick out a random sampling machine sometimes. And you've got to dredge up the info they ask for, or fix their scripts. Right, their scripts are broken. Much nicer to when they show up at the door to say, "Oh yeah, I already ran the script. Here's your PDF file. You know, call me next year." All right. So InSpec is open source. Anyone can play with it and use it. You can even build your own, you know, compliance framework on top of InSpec if you wanted to, as you can with ServerSpec. It works with Test Kitchen as well. So how do we eat? How do we make our money? Compliance is going to be the GUI itself and the ability to blast out scans to multiple machines. That will be a paid feature. Right now, it's basically, I think it's just bundled with Chef. Did you get any info on that? It's basically, yeah. If you're a Chef customer, you can have it. Yeah. So, but if you want to take it for a spin, like, you know, please let me know. We'll get you a compliance server to play with.
No, it's included in the terminal.
Yeah, so even if you only bought like 21 nodes, you know, you could use it. That I have to ask. Yeah, I don't think we put any limits on like how many things you can scan with it. It's up to 25 now. Okay, so you'd have to buy 26.
Yeah. Well, can you install the Chef compliance as a standalone?
Yeah.
On-premise with the.
Yeah, you can.
with your
Yeah, we want you to. We want you to take it and test it and like let us know what you don't like and what you do like. Yeah.
What are the client requirements?
Either SSH, if it's some flavor of Unix. We support most of the Unices, at least the reasonably modern ones. No.
So what? That's my question. I mean,
Oh.
how far back can you go?
I'll have to ask Christian and Dominic. Like, how far back do you want to go? Okay. All right.
What are the requirements on the client side as far as what sort of interpreter do you have to run through?
Right, because it's obviously got to stand up some temporary framework. Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
What's the requirements?
Okay. I'll get an answer on that for you. Yeah, let me add it to my notes. No. Windows is absolutely included. WinRM. That I've got a more clear answer on. If it supports WinRM, we probably can do it. Yeah, which would sort of exclude your NTs and
So,
Is anyone running NT still?
so if anybody wants to stay around and ask questions, you can do that. We're gonna wrap up. It's a little after 8. We're gonna try to
All right.
respect everybody's time. Appreciate Sean. Also appreciate we're at the improving location. They do have some open positions. If anybody's interested in those, you might be close to the. I don't know. I'm the board. Yeah. So just in case anybody's interested in those, but that's all we have. Again, reach out to us with any questions, DevOps, what's going on, information, with Twitter accounts, all that stuff. Just let us know. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks, gang. Yeah.
Things are in there, this location, so if you're looking at stuff, start lining up.